Hello there. Are you ready to learn the clarinet? Yes, let's go. All right. So this is the clarinet right here. And I myself, my name is Viraj, first of all. And I myself am a percussionist. So when I was beginning to learn clarinet, it was definitely a new experience for me, especially because I never ever played any woodwind, any brass instrument, like literally no instrument that required blowing at all. So I was familiar with percussion, but not with clarinet. And while beginning, I had a hard time learning the basics of breathing. But now, since it's been a few weeks, particularly 8 weeks into the learning approaches class I am taking at UCLA, here is my instructional video that I'm going to be sharing with you for those of you who are just learning how to begin the clarinet. So let's get started. You have your clarinet case right here. It seems small, but it's mighty. So we are going to open the clarinet case, and we're going to I'm going to show you how to set up the instrument. So as you open the case, you have these components. So you want to make sure you first get the bell. So I'll put the instrument down here. Okay, so you want to make sure that you get the bell of the instrument, and you want to make sure you get the lower part of the clarinet, which is this piece right here. And while you're setting up, make sure that you do not press any of the keys too hard, or else they might break. And you want to make sure that you piece your instrument like this, piecing it in very gently, because these keys are very delicate, and this clarinet in general is very, very expensive. So make sure that while you're putting the clarinet in for each piece, to make sure that you're not pressing any of the keys too hard, making sure that you press on the black areas without any of the keys there. Then the next piece you would like to put in is this piece right here, which is the bloodline of mainly all the notes that we will be playing today. And this key, you have to basically press this part right here, which basically allows for this contraption, which is located right over here. You see how I'm pressing on this key and it's going up like that? It's because we have to make sure that we can connect it to the lower part of the clarinet right here. And if you press this key while you are trying to screw it in, it's going to connect and it's going to lock in place right here. However, if you do not do this, then there's a chance that this piece right here may actually break, and some of the keys right here may also come loose. So we want to make sure that we do not make that happen. And in doing so, we just have to press this key and everything will be okay. So let's try that. So we're going to put this on here like this. May take a little bit of strength, but you'll get it right this. And then you want to take what I call like this little nose piece right here and screw it in like this. And then the fun part, which I'll show you, is you basically take this main mouthpiece off and come with the case. You have this reed, so we're going to deal with that later, but for right now we're going to take off the fastener, which will be used very much in this piece, and we are going to put the mouthpiece part on the last thing to put on the instrument. You want to make sure that the mouthpiece, this part is facing like this. You don't want to put it the other way around, or else you're gonna have your playing style backwards. So now what you want to do is you want to take out the reed just like this, and you want to make sure you can wet it, so that way we make sure it's soaked. Just like that. And you want to make sure that the reed is aligned with the mouthpiece, and if it's not aligned with the mouthpiece correctly, there's a chance that the reed might chip, and if your reed chips, then it's game over and you'll need a new reed. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So we can keep the reed aligned like this, and this is the fastener, which allows the reed to stay in place connected with the mouthpiece. So as we get the reed settled, we make sure we fasten it. And then voila, we set up the clarinet. So now the next thing is posture. While I was beginning to learn the clarinet, I realized that posture is very important before we begin to play an instrument like the clarinet. We want to make sure that we have a nice straight posture, so we don't want to be sitting hunched back like that, or we don't want to be bending our spine over. We want to make sure that we are sitting up to the edge of our chairs, and we make sure that our feet are planted straight and flat, so just like this. And you want to make sure that as you are setting up, you want to make sure that your arms are pretty outward and that you keep a nice 45-degree angle, so like that. And as you're doing that, you also want to make sure that while you're beginning to set your embouchure, which I'll talk about in a few seconds, make sure that your chin is pointing straight. So you don't want to be bent down like this to play. You want to make sure that you're sitting up straight like this, and you're making sure that you're looking straight and your chin is kind of like in a nice neutral position. So now getting to the embouchure. The embouchure is basically the part where your mouth rests on the mouthpiece, and it's configured by the way your mouth is positioned. So what I like to think about my embouchure is I like to think about this, like my thumb, as a mouthpiece. And in class, as my teacher was teaching me, we learned how to set our embouchure. So by taking our thumb and allowing the tongue to roll back and our upper teeth to come on top of the thumb like this. And as you're doing it, you want to make sure that your lower lip is kind of like sagged back, but not making sure that both of your lips are rolled back. You want to make sure that your bottom lip is kind of pointed inward, so like this. So you get that motion right there. So as we implement it to the mouthpiece, you want to make sure that you keep that nice embouchure. And what I like to do is keep the corners of my lips very tight and precise, because as we are blowing, we want to make sure that none of the sound, like we don't get a really bad sound out of it. So, and also you don't want to make sure that your cheeks are puffed up as you breathe. So it should be something like this. And basically, we come to the breathing. So the breathing is so important because it basically establishes the sound that we need to get on the clarinet. And as we are focusing on our breathing, I like to think of it as breathing from my diaphragm, which is this muscle in your abs. And in the beginning, I used to actually breathe kind of like this, where I kind of raise my shoulders up, because I wasn't used to getting a consistent, nice breath from the diaphragm. But as I began to learn and adapt and change my old habits, I noticed that using the diaphragm actually allows you to get a more resonant and much more longer, deeper breath to get that consistent sound you need to play the clarinet. So as we are sitting up straight, make sure that you are taking a nice deep breath, such as, so you see how I'm using the diaphragm and my body's kind of going like that without having to raise my shoulders. That's basically what you need to look for when you're playing the clarinet. So we are going to try playing a basic note, and as I'm playing the basic note, notice how I set the pitch using my breathing style, using the diaphragm. So as we did that, you notice that I basically breathed from the diaphragm and I got a nice consistent sound. That's what we're basically looking for. So now, some of the songs that I learned as a beginning student were Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and Hot Cross Buns. There are much more other songs, but for the purpose of this video, I feel like it is the easiest for myself to teach you guys upon. So basically, the fundamentals for Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is to learn the notes. So in the C major scale, we have the notes B flat, or in this case, we have the notes C, D, E, F, G, and A. So you might be wondering, which notes are those supposed to be? So I will teach you right now. So as we were saying at the clarinet, make sure that your right thumb is focused upon the thumb position right here. And as we are focusing on the thumb position, we want to make sure that these keys are resting on top, but not pressing down and covering the holes. Because in this purpose, we're not going to be using the right hand, but the left hand will come in handy for this video. So with positioning each of the notes, we want to make sure that we are covering all the holes, because if we are not covering the holes correctly, then we are going to get a fuzzy sound and a squeak sound. And not to mention, or also to mention it, squeaking is basically like signaled when you have a lot of your mouthpiece kind of going near the bottom of the mouthpiece where the contact point between the reed, like the mouthpiece and the reed, kind of becomes like closed as much. So if you see this opening right here in the reed, right here where the two kind of meet a little bit, this flappy part, that's where you want to keep your mouth positioning, as I showed you, keeping the tongue rolled back and going like that. So I mentioned this because squeaking can happen in a lot of different ways if you do not have the right positioning. So a squeak sounds something like this. And that's what you do not want. And also it can happen if you do not put your fingers in the right holes, or if it's not covering that much. So the proper way to cover the holes, which I'll show you in Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in C major, is you want to make sure that each of the fingers is kind of like hovering over like this. So in the case of Twinkle Twinkle, the C note would be this. And as you can tell, this back note, if you do not play this back note, you're not going to get the C, the D, and the E. However, if you play this by itself, you're going to get the F note. So it's actually it's like a perfect fourth above C, so like this. So you want to make sure that this is pressed down at all times until you get to G, and G is basically using no fingers, so like this. Let me do that one more time. So that's how you play G. Now B flat is where you have to take your ring, your middle, and your index finger, and you see these little silver line right here, the circle. You want to make sure you press down on it, as well as this note, and covering this back note with the thumb. So this is how you play B flat with nice posture and good embouchure. That's how you play B flat. So now the notes in Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is, in this case, C, 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 G, G, and then you have the A note, which you have to press with this key right here without putting any of the pressures on the holes. So just using this right here. That's it. Pretty easy, right? So it goes da, 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 da. And then the open G would be, then the F would be, E would be, D would be, and then C would be. You see how I'm not getting a nice breath, making sure that I use my diaphragm to get the sound. That's basically what you want to be focusing upon. So we are going to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star using all of these techniques I just taught you. So notice how I'm using the fingers, making sure that I keep the fingers close to the instrument and not that far, so that I can get consistent breathing. And also with the breathing, I like to think of it as breathing in kind of like 4-note intervals. So I want to make sure that as I'm taking that nice breath, I always am thinking that I need to sustain my breath and not try to take the breath too early or too late, but coming at the right time after they set those 4 notes, four notes breathing, 4 notes breathing. So here it goes, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. That's how you play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And with hot cross buns, it's also the same thing, except you have to learn going descending D, C, or D, C, D, C, V, D, C, B. So something like that. But I feel like the main thing to understand as a beginning level clarinet player is to make sure that you have good embouchure and making sure that you get a nice sustained breath, have good posture, and know where to place your hands in the correct holes. And making sure that it's covered and you're keeping your corners tight and you're also keeping your chin up so that you can get a nice 45-degree angle and get that nice pitch. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy your journey on the clarinet.